Don't say you're not coming in. You're not coming in. Simple as that. You're not coming into our sacred spaces. You're not coming in.
It's a sacred
You're
ground.
not coming in. You're not coming in.
Why not? Why can't I come in?
Because I said you're not.
This is Larry Krasner's town hall at Mother Bethel Church at Society Hill.
Sacred spaces. You're not coming on sacred spaces.
Where are you? Where were you yesterday?
You're not coming in our sacred spaces. Simple as that. Because I said you're not coming in. I'm saying you're not coming in.
You have no right to tell me.
You're not coming in.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're not coming in our sacred space. You'll see what it is. I don't care. You'll see what it means when you come up in here. You're going to see what it means.
He said don't threaten people. Don't threaten people, he said. Don't threaten people.
We were trying to come to the event. They denied us entry. They have a human wall. They have the blue wall.
Hold on. Is it true what I just heard? Wait a minute. MAGA going to black churches tomorrow on Sunday? The boycott? A protest? To a black church? MAGA, you might want to stay home tomorrow. You might want to go take that to a white church. One thing you don't do, MAGA, you don't mess with black churches on Sunday. MAGA, don't do that. Don't do that, MAGA. Don't do it.
And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to be, for the statement I'm about to make, I'm going to be called a racist. And I will be called every name under the sun. But somebody needs to stand up and speak to the black church.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are doing great wherever you're watching us from. You are not coming in, simple as that. Those are the words being heard outside a historic black church as people physically stand at the entrance and refuse to allow political agitators to turn a sacred space into another battlefield in Americans' culture war. And let's be clear about something. This isn't simply a story about MAGA. This isn't simply about Democrats versus Republicans. And it isn't simply about whether someone supports Kamala Harris or Charlie Kirk. This is about something much deeper. Who gets to decide what happened inside a black institution? Because black churches have never been just places where people gather on Sunday morning. For generations, they have been places of refuge, political organization, education, community leadership, and residence. The black church helped produce some of the most important movements for civil rights and racial justice in American history. So when political activities show up at a historic black church and attempt to bring their political confrontation through those doors, you cannot separate that moment from history. And then we hear conservative religious voices attacking black pastors because they support democratic candidates. Suddenly, these pastors are accused of endorsing everything conservative despise. But here is the contradiction. When white evangelical leaders use their pulpit to tell millions of people how to vote, that's called religious freedom. When black pastors encourage their congregation to vote based on their understanding of justice, suddenly is called political corruption. So maybe the real question isn't whether churches should be political. Maybe the real question is, why does black political independence make certain people so uncomfortable? And that's what we are going to unpack today, because this confrontation exposed something America have been struggling with for generations. Black people demanding the freedom to define their own faith, their own politics, and their own institution without asking permission. Let's dive into the video real quick. I'll be back with my commentaries.
And the black church votes predominantly for the party that is anti-God. What's going on here?
White people, stop playing with black church. Like, y'all, like, seriously, stop playing with black church. Because watching what happened yesterday at Mother Bethel, and shout out to every black body, every white ally that held the line for that little raggedy white boy that was trying to sow seeds of discontent, right? Mother Bethel is the oldest piece of land, not church, the oldest piece of land owned by African Americans in this country when Richard Allen purchased it in 1791. Furthermore, the church was founded out of protest to racism because black worshipers at St. George's Methodist Episcopalian Church were segregated from the rest of the congregation. And when Absalom Jones and Richard Allen staged a protest and were praying in the white section, they were forcibly removed. So they say, y'all can keep this mess. We're making our own safe space. Now, I am always going to have respect for the sanctity of black church, but especially for Mother Bethel. Baby, y'all better stop playing with the ancestors like this.
Most white Christians literally have no idea how deep the sense of betrayal is in the black church over our support for Donald Trump. It's like a knife in the back to them. Because remember, before Trump, there were all of these racial reconciliation movements, starting with the Promise Keepers in the 90s to unite the church. And a lot of people felt like real progress was being made. But then Trump came along spouting his racist hatred. And just the other day, calling Somali immigrants garbage. And white Christians are silent, just like we have been for 10 years as this man has steamrolled over black and brown people. And what the white church's embrace of Trump showed was that the whole thing was shallow. It was all performative. Pastors on stage hugging and praying together, but it never reached the heart level. To the point that when Black Lives Matter erupted, we couldn't see it as a heart cry from the black community for justice. Instead, we saw it as a political threat. And every day we stand by silent as Trump weaponizes race for his own political gain. We show that we have prioritized politics even over our common humanity.
I think you got to be a Klan member to come to our church, and we're a church.
This is Thomas Robb, the Grand Wizard of the KKK, or as he likes to put it, the National Director. See, the Ku Klux Klan is currently going through a rebrand. Instead of calling themselves the KKK, they now call themselves the Knights Party. And Thomas Robb doesn't like to call himself the Grand Wizard. Instead, he's chosen a more subtle PR approach, the National Director.
We don't have a sign, everybody welcome, because everybody's not welcome to our church. There's
something that no one has ever really talked about is the fact that Thomas Robb is not only the Grand Wizard of the KKK, he's also a pastor.
There's a certain element of people that just aren't welcome. The image always shows Jesus Christ with arms outstretched, wide out, like everybody. But the reality is Jesus Christ is not wide arms stretched. His arms are, what he said, the path was straight and narrow.
Right, but wouldn't you say that the path of straight and narrow is welcome to everybody?
Well, we're having to dissect various applications of that statement. But is it open to everybody, like in the broad sense of the word? No.
What I hear is like a person of color, a black man, can they be saved and then be part of the kingdom of God?
What does saved mean?
I mean, if we're going to go off of a traditional theological practice, it is understanding Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. A traditional Christian perspective, that means then you gain access to heaven.
Well, I like the word redeemed.
I asked him if a black man could go to heaven, and this is Thomas Robb deflecting that question for 13 minutes. The reason why I was asking was when I was asking if a black man can be saved, you would just reference that they could just be blessed. So as one...
I just don't know. Yeah. I mean, the Bible doesn't... Literally, in spite of what people say, the Bible doesn't address black people hardly at all.
So does that mean then, so your belief is the Bible was written by white people to white people?
In modern terms, written by Israelites.
I mean, it's a very generic way of putting it, but yeah.
Written by Israelites to Israel.
So would an Israeli be welcome in your church?
Probably not. And
I want to make sure you picked up on that. His belief actually has nothing to do with how he believes the Bible or who he believes the Bible was written by or written to. It all has to do with the color of their skin. And that, my brothers and sisters, is how deeply racism and Christianity can go.
You may have seen the video of a well-known white evangelical preacher castigating the black church. He would probably want me to mention his name, but first of all, there should be no such thing as a white church or a black church. In Christ, there is to be neither Jew nor Greek, nor male nor female. Jesus prayed we all be one. A divided kingdom is not the kingdom of heaven. The only reason there is such a distinction is that for centuries, the Western white church believed that skin pigments and ethnic origin determined your humanity. People of color were excluded, not because of cultural differences, but on the basis of color-defined worth. White supremacy created the black church. White supremacy created the social infrastructure and economic institutions that systematically divided and excluded their neighbors Jesus said to love. While we've made some progress, and white sheets, slavery, lynchings, and burning crosses are no longer societal norms, the roots of racism's division still run deep. Those roots are embedded in the us against them mentality that either subtly or not so subtly castigates entire people groups as the problem and their demise as the solution. You know, those blacks, immigrants, gays, queers, liberals, progressives, Marxists, Democrats, vermin, animals. How could they even be human? White man, how dare you castigate every black Christian as the problem to be cursed when you are guilty of creating and perpetuating the dividing abyss of hate that necessitated segregation by color in the first place? How dare you condemn the black church for its politics while you drag the good news of Jesus through the mud by ignoring and endorsing vile words, actions, and hate-filled rhetoric, all excused in the hypocrisy of calling yourself pro-life. Your silence is as loud as the disgraceful and disgusting racist jokes thousands laughed at this weekend at a political rally. Opposing abortion is no excuse for alignment with such blatant and continual debauchery. The people you say need Jesus see you supporting the very opposite of the good news of Jesus that he proclaimed and demonstrated through self-sacrificing love. The capital C church is neither black nor white. The capital C church is neither Republican nor Democrat. The capital C church has a savior, not a Caesar. And what you support and overlook to prove your side right reveals who you really follow.
Hey guys, it's Leash. Listen, so, God, why? I mean, if it's not one thing, it's another. So, like, apparently there's this whole push for MAGA folks. I'm assuming it's, and let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming it's just white males of the MAGA movement that have been attempting to go or are attempting to go into black churches to protest because of the sermons that were preached by certain black ministers about Charlie Kirk that was not to MAGA's liking, right? Like, so you're going to go into these houses of worship to do what? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going in there to, you know, interrupt worship of God. You're going in there to cause commotion in the house of the Lord. For y'all to constantly profess that you are, you know, Christian, and listen, we're finding out that some of the MAGA folks aren't Christian, or right wing rather, you know, depending, I mean, these labels, so many labels. But anyway, what is the, and then on top of that, what is the point? Like, because folks don't agree with who Charlie Kirk was and how he, you know, would say so many vile things about black folks and other marginalized groups. So people are supposed to just deal and take that. Listen, do yourself a favor. Go to your house of worship and pray on it and do what you got to do. But just coming in and being so, like, ridiculous and trying to bogart your way into a house of worship because you feel like you have to do whatever you feel like you have to do. Because I don't even understand what the hell's happening. Like, what? This is... When they keep saying... When I say they, I'm just talking about just this, what we're seeing in terms of the common denominator, in terms of the issues in this country and the violence in this country and the toxicity in this country. I'm just going to say it, guys. It's the MAGA folks. It's these folks that are out here with this racist ideology, and folks that are upholding the white supremacy. You are the common denominator. You are the problem. Beyonce is right. America has a problem, and the problem is this right-wing craziness. Get it together. Like, not everybody has to agree with y'all. If you like Charlie Kirk and you want to, go and, celebrate his life and legacy, then do that shit over there. Leave us out of it.
This is First African Baptist Church, the oldest black church in North America. The building, built by slaves. The gentleman that laid the first brick laid the last. The balcony hold pews that actually were built by slaves. They have the oldest information in this building. That information is written in cursive Hebrew writing. Downstairs, the air holes that the people, when they hid beneath the floors, they were able to use are actually African prayer symbols. This building was built during the night hours. It was also not only used as a place of worship, but it was used as a place to help out on the Underground Railroad. One of the greatest missions, I believe, ever taken out and carried through was handled beneath the floors of First African Baptist Church. There are many items in here that now stands as proof of the Underground Railroad. In the ceiling of the church is a code that this building is used as a safe place, and that code is 9-patch. 9-patch is a quilt symbol that was used during the Underground Railroad to identify safe places. So that 9-patch was placed right in the ceiling of the First African Baptist Church in plain view. If you're interested in getting a tour of this church, you're welcome to come to First African Baptist on Franklin Square, or you can call 233-6597, and you will be welcome to have a tour.
So if you haven't heard, Donnie Swaggart, the son of Jimmy Swaggart, the televangelist who was caught with a prostitute twice in the 80s and was eventually defrocked from the Assemblies of God church, which moved him to move his church to a non-denominational church so he wouldn't have any institutional accountability. Yes, that man's son, Donnie, had a message for the black church. And I just want to kind of respond to that real quick.
Now, I'm fixing to make some people mad right now. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to be, for the statement I'm about to make, I'm going to be called a racist. And I will be called every name under the sun. But somebody needs to stand up and speak to the black church. When the largest African-American Pentecostal denomination, when that leader stands up and said, I endorse that woman, he was saying, I endorse murder. I endorse homosexuality. I endorse lesbianism. I endorse transgenderism. I endorse every evil that hell could prosper or bring up to the right. That's wrong, folks. And the black church votes predominantly for the party that is anti-God. What's going on here? What's going on? See, my statement to them is this. We've had them call into the program. I don't like it when you talk about like this. Well, no, the problem is they don't like it because we're stepping on their toes. Hello?
So first of all, before I even get into this stuff about the black church, Donnie, you need to say her name. Say her name. I just don't understand how you conservative, evangelical, Pentecostal Christians can try to claim the moral high ground, and yet you refuse to call Vice President Kamala Harris by her name. What this shows us is that you actually, as much as you claim to want progressive Christians or other people to respect authority, you in fact actually don't respect authority unless it looks and sounds and walks and acts just like you, unless it's a cisgendered white man. Second, let's begin by asking ourselves, why is there such a thing called the Black church? You see, the Black church in America exists solely because white Christians refuse to let Black people into their spaces. These are the same white Christians who use the Bible to justify enslavement, to use the Bible to justify genocide of indigenous communities, to use the Bible to justify segregation. These white Christians were more interested in preserving white spaces than they were in actually creating churches that reflect the broad and beloved community of God. That is why there's such a thing as a Black church, because y'all white people actually don't want us in your spaces. Third, why does someone like Donnie Swaggart even think he has the right, or the authority, if you will, to speak to the Black church? Donnie Swaggart is practicing what you could call white saviorism. He is deeply embedded in a kind of white saviorist logic. And essentially what this is, this idea that people that look like me, people who are Black and brown, people who are not or perform whiteness, that we need somebody to come help us be better humans. That we don't have the intelligence or the natural instincts to know what humanness looks like. So white men, it's their call by God to come in and to help us learn what it means to actually practice Christianity, right? Or have a democracy, or any of the other crazy things that they think people of color don't know how to do. And yes, I'm gonna call you racist because this is in fact racist. It traffics in the idea of Black unintelligence. It's premised on this notion that Black people don't know how to govern themselves or lead themselves, that we are not smart enough to think critically about the choices that we are making. But people like Donnie Swaggart need to learn and recognize, and people who practice that kind of theology need to understand and recognize, is that Black people and Black progressive Christians, we don't need your mentorship. We don't need your guidance. And we recognize that the God you follow, the God you worship, is actually power. You worship the God that would have allowed enslavement. You worship the God that would have encouraged genocide. You worship the God who thought segregation was completely moral. That is your God, the God of power. That's not the God that we see in the gospel. It's not the God that we worship. When you read the Gospels, you see that Jesus didn't talk about forcing anyone to follow his spiritual path of radical compassion. It was an invitation to follow this way of restoration, this way of living that was about love, about justice, and about compassion. It was about liberation from suffering. This is the Christianity that the Black church, that my church, the church of my upbringing, practices. It's a Christianity rooted in the gospel, in Jesus' message that he actually spoke in his first sermon in Galilee, where it says in Luke 4 that the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me. He has sent me to preach good news to the poor, to proclaim release to the prisoners and recovery of sight to the blind, to liberate the oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. You see, the guidelines for what churches ought be, the mission statement for what churches ought do, is to, in fact, practice this liberatory, justice-centered, compassion-oriented Christianity. Maybe if you start practicing that, I don't know, maybe then some folks who look like me will take the time to listen to what you got to say. Until then, maybe you should just keep talking to your own people, because hopefully they'll listen to you.
There is a person called Pope Nicholas V. Pope Nicholas V, a Roman Catholic Church Pope in the 14th century, is the one who said, I'm talking about a Pope, not an Ashara, a Pope who said, not even a cardinal, but a Pope. You know what he said? He gave permission that Black people can be made to be, and the justification he gave was that black people are at the level of they do not have a. So he gave authorization for the enslavement, exploitation of black people. That's when it started by Pope Nicholas V. Where did it come from? It came from a church. The strongest church in the world at that time being the Roman Catholic Church. A white pope said you are an. It's okay for you to be enslaved. And the Portuguese are the first people that took this. And they went to the coastal areas of Africa. And they took Africans as slaves. They took them to Brazil. They took them to America. They took them to England. And they took them to a lot of European countries. I'm talking about your ancestors. It started in the church. Secondly, what I want to bring to your attention, is that King Leopold II. Now, you can go and Google the letter of King Leopold II. King Leopold II sent missionaries. Missionaries to the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, as it is known today. What were they going to do there? They were going to inflict damage in the minds of people. And what he said was that don't teach these people about God, they already know God. Don't teach these people about right and wrong, they already know that the difference between right and wrong. And just said, give them the Bible in such a way that they take the Bible so seriously that they forget about themselves. And I'm glad you're going to read that letter. You're going to Google it. Letter by King Leopold II. And he said, make these black people, tell them, Hori, it is difficult for a rich man to go to heaven. It is like a camel going through a needle's eye. And that's what you must indoctrinate them with. Indoctrinate them. Tell them it is okay, or they can struggle and suffer here on earth. Tell them they must not mind to struggle and suffer here on earth. Because in heaven, they will walk on the streets of gold. Tell them that the gold which is here on earth is worthless. Let them look upon the gold they will inherit in heaven. By missionaries. The NG Kerk. The NG Kerk in South Africa was instrumental in coming up with the policies of apartheid. It came from the church. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this to open your mind for the damage that is in the mind of the black person was crafted, it was designed from the church pulpit. And that is why I also use the church pulpit to address and reverse the damage that is in the minds of black people. I am calling upon all pastors who are black pastors to use the pulpit in church to liberate the black mind, because the black mind is damaged. Black people are full of self-hate that was designed from people who are standing on a pulpit like I'm standing right now. Apartheid was partnering with the NG Kerk. And for you to tell me I must not talk about black men-related issues from the church pulpit is a sign of the damage and the destruction that has been caused in your mind by the system that I am addressing right now. So I'm calling upon all pastors. 50% we preach the Bible. 50% of the time we preach the Bible. 50% of the time we preach black liberation theology. Because it is our people that have been affected by what Pope Nicholas V started 600 years ago.
Welcome back, guys. What we are seeing here is bigger than one confrontation outside a church. It's a story about power, identity, religion, and black political independence. Because when people show up at a historic black church to bring a political confrontation into that space, we have to understand why the congregation might react strongly. Mother Bethel AME isn't simply another building. The black church has historically been one of the most important institutions in black American life. It has been a place of worship, but also place where communities organized, discussed politics, fought for civil rights, supported family, and built collective power. And that history matters because black Americans didn't create separate churches because they wanted to divide themselves from America. They created them because they were repeatedly told they didn't belong in white institutions. So when black congregation says this is our sacred space and you are not coming in here to disrupt it, that isn't necessary hatred. Sometimes it's simply a community establishing a boundary around an institution it fought generations to build. And that's where the political hypocrites become impossible to ignore. We have watched conservative evangelical leaders openly use churches and pulpits to influence election. They talk about abortion. They talk about immigration. They talk about LGBTQ rights. They talk about judges, education, tax, and presidential candidates. And they are allowed to do that. But when black pastors encourage their congregation to think about voting through the lens of racial justice, economic inequality, voting rights, or social policy, suddenly some people accuse them of corrupting Christianity. So which is it? Are Christians allowed to participate in politics, or aren't they? Because you can't demand religious freedom from your own political beliefs while insisting that black Christians remain silent when their beliefs lead them somewhere you don't like. That's not religious freedom. That's a demand for political obedience, and black Americans don't owe anyone that obedience. Now consider the rhetoric directed towards black church leaders who support democratic candidates. That argument is essentially that supporting a particular candidate means endorsing every position conservatives associate with that political party. But that's not how individual political decisions work. A black pastor can support a candidate because of healthcare, because of voting rights, because of economic policy, because of criminal justice, because of racial equality, or simply because they believe that candidate is better for their community. You don't get to erase all those reasons and replace them with your own political interpretation. And you certainly don't get to declare someone's Christianity invalid because they voted differently from you. That's especially important when we consider the history of black Christianity, because black churches have always had a complicated relationship with American politics. The church was simply involved in the civil rights movement. It provided meeting space. It helped organize communities. It supported activists to give people courage. And it offered a moral language for challenging a society that routinely denied black Americans equal rights. So when someone says church and politics shouldn't mix, we have to ask, when did that rule begin? Because politics was already determining whether black people could vote, where they could live, what school they could attend, and whether they would be treated equally under the law. For black Americans, politics wasn't something happening somewhere else. Politics was affecting everyday life. And that's why black liberation theology became so important. It asks a powerful question. What does faith mean to people living under oppression? What does Christianity mean when people are being denied dignity? What does justice mean when laws themselves have been used to discriminate? And what does responsibility does faith have to challenge injustice? Those aren't meaningless questions. They are defending the idea that black communities can have institutions they control. They can decide who enters. They can decide what happens inside. They can choose their own pastors. They can interpret their faith. And they can participate in politics without asking permission from another political movement. That's called autonomy. And autonomy isn't extremism, it's democracy. And honestly, that's what I think we should take away from this entire situation. This isn't ultimately about whether somebody likes MAGA. It isn't about whether someone supports Kamala Harris. It isn't about whether every black pastor is progressive. It isn't about pretending that every political position coming from the black church is automatically correct. Black Americans aren't a monolith. Black Christians aren't a monolith. There are black conservatives. There are black Democrats. There are black independents. There are people who don't identify with either side. That's democracy. The problem begins when someone's believe black people are only legitimate when they make the political choice that person approve of. That's when disagreement becomes control. And we have seen that dynamic before. Black Americans have repeatedly been told, don't organize, don't protest, don't get political, don't challenge the system, don't vote that way, don't speak too loudly. But every generations have produced people willing to reject those expectations. That's how social progress happened, and the black church has been central to that process. It survived slavery, it survived segregation, it survived Jim Crow, it survived intimidation, it survived attacks on civil rights organizers, it survived attempts to control black political participation, and it survived people telling black Christians that they were practicing their faith incorrectly. So perhaps the real question is, when are black Americans finally allowed to be independent without being accused of being divisive? When can black churches organize without being accused of political manipulations? When can black pastors speak about racial justice without being accused of abandoning Christianity? And when can a black congregation simply say, this is our space, without having that boundary turn into political controversy? Because a boundary isn't automatically hatred. Sometimes a boundary is simply a boundary. And that's particularly important when you are talking about communities that have historically had their boundaries violated. If you believe in freedom, then you have to believe in freedom, even when somebody uses that freedom to disagree with you. If you truly believe in democracy, then you have to accept that black voters don't owe your political movement their support. support. And if you truly believe in religious liberty, then you have to accept that black Christians have their right to interpret their faith through their own history and experiences. You can't demand freedom for yourself and then become angry when somebody else exercises it. That's not freedom, that's control. And black Americans don't need to be politically managed. They don't need outsiders telling them which candidates their pastor should support. They don't need outsiders telling them what their church should believe. And they certainly don't need political agitators turning sacred space into another battlefield in America's never-ending cultural war. The black church has its own history, its own tradition, its own theology, its own struggles, and its own political voice. That voice doesn't have to match yours to be legitimate, and that's the part I think people need to understand. Black autonomy is not an attack on America. Black political independence is not hatred. Black liberation theology is not rejection of Christianity. And a black congregation protecting its sacred space isn't automatically intolerance. Sometimes it's simply a community saying, we know our history. We know what this institution means, and we are going to decide for ourselves what happens here. After generations of black Americans being told where they could worship, how they could vote, and what they were supposed to believe, there is nothing radical about saying, we will decide for ourselves. That's not extremism, that's self-determination, that's democracy, and ultimately, that's freedom. Thanks for staying with me through at the end of this video. If you are just coming across this channel for the first time, do well to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future discussion. I will see you in the next one. Bye.